Hey everyone and welcome to Storytime. My name is Jake and today we are going to be looking at the subreddit r/maliciouscompliance, where people conform to the letter but not the spirit of a request. If you're new around here, please do hit subscribe down below so that you never miss out on another video. But for now, let's sit back, relax, and enjoy some malicious compliance. Overtime ban? Alright, I guess I'd better lock up now. This is an old story from back when I used to work in the opticians department of a major supermarket chain. I was a part-timer, working 9 hours per week, 3 PM to 9 PM on Saturdays, and 1 PM to 4 PM on Sundays. Part of my job was to close down the department on both days, because none of the managers liked being around at closing time. The department closed at 9 PM on Saturdays, but it was often around 9:20 that I actually left. Closing down a department takes time, mostly because you can't do it when customers are browsing. Unsurprisingly, I consistently worked more hours than I was supposed to. All store employees were on the clock, and for some reason, the store took readings down to the second. You were paid an hourly rate to within a few seconds of how long you were clocked in for. My manager, I'll call her Val because that was her name, called a meeting at 3 PM on Saturday, which coincidentally was the time I was scheduled to start work. Everyone in the department was either starting or finishing their shifts within a couple of hours of then, so it was a logical time. But that was about the only logical thing about it. The thrust of the meeting was that some people, she said, looking directly at me down the length of her not inconsiderable nose, were claiming more than their allotted hours, and that this must stop. Henceforth, all overtime must be approved in writing. This was entirely her decision. Other departments didn't have this problem as long as you weren't taking the mick. Fast forward to about 8:45 PM. Val and I were the only employees left in the department. She started to gather her things, as is her way, and I started the process of putting our more expensive frames into their night display cases, where they could safely be locked away when the department was closed. "What on earth are you doing, There Shall Be Wings?" "I'm locking up. I have to make sure I don't go over my hours today." "This department has to be open until 9 PM. It's in the store handbook. You can't lock up right now, my boss will be furious." "You know from experience that it takes a good 10 minutes. I lied, it's actually more like 20, to lock up. I'm not allowed to be on the premises after I clock out. I have to start locking up, otherwise I'll be disciplined." I reached for the tannoy and my voice saying, "Good evening, would Mrs. Locke please come to the optical department? Mrs. Locke to the optical department. Thank you," resonated through the store. Code for "Security, bring the keys, we're locking up." Val goes white as a sheet. The first cracks in her caked on makeup began to show. I could see the look on her snooty face as a very large penny began to drop. She yelled, "Wait here," while leaving the department with a purposeful stride. By the time she'd returned, I'd explained to the security guard what's happening. He agreed to play along. We start slowly locking down the spectacle frames. Val, with sweat starting to show on her brow, wordlessly handed me a hastily scribbled note authorizing 30 minutes of overtime. I showed it to the security guard, who nodded. Val left without a word, looking really flustered, just as a customer walked in. My friend from security unlocked the frames again and I went to serve. The following day, Val's usual snooty demeanor had changed. She didn't look contrite, but there were definitely a few cracks in her expression. She took me to one side and without preamble handed me a new rota and launched into what was clearly a well-rehearsed speech. "There shall be wings. I have approved your request to extend your hours to 10 hours a week. I now expect you to work from 3 PM until 9:30 PM on Saturdays, and from 1 PM until 4:30 PM on Sundays. I trust this will not be a problem? Oh, that's fine. Thank you, Val. And henceforth, if you should happen to work slightly over your hours, do not be overly concerned about it. Businesses always do this, don't they? They just say, oh, you need to work this amount of hours, but you also need to work overtime, but we also don't want you to work overtime because we don't want to pay you more. Yeah, and henceforth, we'll be moving on to the next story. That table is free. I can see it. It's empty. About a year back, I worked in a family restaurant. It was a Saturday night, and we were pretty busy, with all tables reserved. But it was all under control. I was hosting, and we had a family of 8 due in for a birthday. As I was making my way back to my station, a group of 8 people walked in. For the purpose of this story, the big idiot will be referred to as BI, and I shall be me. The exchange went as follows. Table for 8. No problem, sir. Do you have a reservation? No, I don't think so. Okay, well, I'm very sorry, but we are fully booked for tonight, but I can take a reservation for another night if you wish. No, if I wanted to eat here another night, I would have come here another night. My back got right up. I understand, sir. I do apologise. I'm afraid all of our tables are reserved for tonight, but you're more than welcome to take a seat at the bar if you like, while you choose if you would like to go somewhere else. What about that table over there? Pointing to the birthday table. That's got 8 seats. We'll just sit there. Sorry, that table is reserved for another family. They're due here any minute. If you wait at the bar, we have a 30-minute policy. So if the family doesn't turn up, you can take their table. Well, none of these empty tables have reserved signs on them, so how are we meant to know? Can you not push those 2 together for us? Pointing to 2 tables that weren't even in the same area. The big idiot then spots my manager walking past and grabs her arm to speak with her, which went down as well as a fart in a lift. Excuse me, there is a table over there that we would like to sit at, but this girl here won't let us sit there. We travelled half an hour to get here and I'm not happy. They don't have signs on to say they are reserved, so I don't understand. My manager, without missing a single beat, says, I'm sorry about that, sir. Please wait a second while I sort this out. I won't be long. The big idiot is looking pretty pleased with himself at this point, puffs out his chest, and gives me the smuggest look he's probably given anyone. Until he spots my manager walking out, with the little reserved signs in her hand. Our restaurant used to be self-seating. She walks over to my station, checks the diary, and walks over to each empty table, and places a sign on each one, and walks back over to the station. I'm sorry our system confused you, sir. I have now rectified it. I see we have a free table tomorrow evening at the same time if you would like to come back then. The big idiot turned the most putrid shade of puce you've ever seen in your life and stated he will sit at the bar and wait to see if the table cancels. And as they're walking, the birthday table of 8 walks in. Big idiot huffs and beckons to his family to leave, at which point my manager calls over, if you would like that table for tomorrow, please give us a call. Have a nice evening. Oh, sweet, sweet karma. I don't know if it was just an exaggeration, but when they said, oh, he grabbed the manager, like literally physically grabbed her, that'd have been straight kicked out of there. Nah, like get out, mate. Separate and label each seat, even if it's on one check? You got it. I am a student and I took some time off to focus on my studies. I found myself in a pinch and needed some cash. So I looked for a quick serving job close to my apartment. I found one at a pretty low volume mom and pop pizza place. The manager was your typical bully who liked to let everyone know she was the one in charge, and loved to get on someone's case if they didn't put the pepper shaker back on the table in the right position. Any small thing she had the opportunity to reprimand someone for, she took it. She also loved to humiliate people. I was new, and instantly the staff really seemed to like me. I was overall usually in a good mood, and had a lot of inside jokes with most of the staff. The checks, or the tabs for the table, were handwritten, so I like to abbreviate things to make the process quicker. If things were on one check, I didn't feel a need to separate seats, as they were going on one check anyways, so why should it matter? As the checks are handwritten, the cashier was the manager, and they were in charge of ringing up the receipts and totals of the checks on the one register. I had a table of 3 on one check, so I wrote it on one piece of paper, all under one seat. She calls me over, loudly in front of the whole staff to embarrass me. I'll be X, she will be EL for entitled loser. Hey, X, what have I told you about separate seats? Oh, they're on one check. Okay, well, all seats need to be separate. Even if they're on one check, seems kind of like a waste of time since it's handwritten and all. Yes, I need to know. Each seat, separate. It's not that difficult. So, for the rest of the day, she would patronize me and clap each time I would separate every 2 top table I had. At the end of one shift, a cook could see how crappy she was treating me. He pulled me in the back and said, "Hey, I think you did a great job today. You killed it." He was so genuine. I left the back smiling. 10 minutes later, she told me she needed to talk to me. I was assuming she was going to tell me I did a great job separating checks. Nope. She said the tables look like crap, and I need to put the napkins on the right side of the tables, not the left. I had had it. The next day, I was the closing server. I was alone, just me, her, and the kitchen. Super slow night. Then, we had a large party come in. It was 14 people. No problem. The entire restaurant was empty, and I was the only server. I got their orders, then took a seat. As they were eating, I took my sweet time separating each single order by hand. I made sure to use my very best handwriting, spelling out each individual word. No shorthand tonight. 20 minutes after close, they still hadn't asked for their checks. I was in no rush that night, but my manager was. "Can I get their checks, please? I'm ready to go." "Sure, no problem." I approached the table. "Hey guys, we are wrapping up. No rush, but I have your checks. I separated them all. Are you all separate or on one?" "Oh, put us on one." Now, at this point, I could have just stapled all 14 checks together and asked for the calculated total and asked the manager to simply type the total plus tax. But since she was so hellbent on separate checks, I delivered 14 separate checks for her to calculate up herself. All separate? Seriously? Yep. It took her about 5 minutes to calculate it. After gathering them up, I add the separate totals, staple them, and circle the total. I hand the check over and let them hang out for another 15 minutes before handing over a payment. I go and swipe the card and tell them to have a good night. The manager/cashier is in charge of closing out the final payments. She sees it's on one check. That was on one check? Seriously? I know, they changed their mind. It would have been so much easier for me to just put it on one piece of paper, huh? The death glare she gave me was priceless. I cleaned the table off with a smug grin on my face. I quit 2 weeks later. Shove those separate checks, Catherine. Sure, I'll take a photo for you. This happened to me several times while I was traveling in Japan. While visiting popular tourist sites with my grandma, people would shove their phone in my hands and gesture for me to take a picture. Now, I often offer to take pictures for people struggling with selfies/groups, when I'm able to. And if you ask me, preferably nicely, I'll still try and get you a good shot. But ambushing me by dumping your phone on me and yelling at me to take your picture? Nope. Every one of those photos came out overexposed, unfocused, or with my thumb firmly in the corner blocking most of the people. Oh, the best thing to do is flipping the camera and just taking a load of selfies of yourself and then just handing them back and going, there you go, there's your picture. Hey everyone, I hope you all had a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you want to check out some other videos, then click on screen right now or check out the playlist down below. If you enjoyed that video, then please do leave a like. And if you want to submit your own stories, then you can do so by joining the Discord in the top link in the description. But thank you so much for watching and I will see you very soon.